Tech Revision with Mrs. Swanee Pooh.
Hi everyone, today we are going to be talking about the different types of finishes that are used on woods, the reasons behind them, what they are predominantly used for. So hopefully this is helpful in terms of you understanding these different types of finishes, useful for your NEAs but also for the exam knowledge. So what do you need to know? You need to know about all of these different types of finishes. So I'm going to say this straight away. None of this is tricky. None of this is difficult. The only one that might make you think a little bit more is pressure treating. So I'll make sure I talk about that in enough detail. The others are all things that I can tell you in literally 30 seconds and you'll be like, oh, okay, that's what that is. So we'll go through all of the different types of finishes on here. So we've got polyurethane varnish, water-based paints, I mean, it's paint, stains, colour washes, wax, you've used wax in the department before. Yacht varnish is maybe something that you haven't come across. Danish oil is in the department. Teak oil is maybe something you haven't used. And pressure treating, the one that I said, might be something that you need to look into in a bit more detail. So here we go. Why do we actually apply finishes to wood? So wood's obviously a porous natural surface, and you have already put wood at this point through its seasoning process. So remember in the performance characteristics of wood, we spoke about making sure that the moisture content, and wood is mostly 80 to 90% water when it is first felled or cut down, and you need to remove as much of that moisture as you possibly can through seasoning. So what you need to do therefore is protect any more moisture going into the wood. So if the wood is being used outside, it's to stop it absorbing any moisture, but also on a table or interior furniture, you don't want any spills or anything being soaked up into the material. It protects against decay, so decay from just things like rot. It protects against insect attack, so quite often bugs can make little homes in wood and eat them and cause lots of different problems. I'm sure you've heard of woodworm before. We'll talk about that in a minute. And also another really good reason is to enhance the aesthetics. Lots of wood is very aesthetically pleasing, but quite often people want to change the look of it, the colour, how light or dark the appearance is of that material to meet or match, sorry, the design of their homes. So those are the main reasons that you apply it. And natural wood degrades in different ways. So you have something called wet rot. So when wood that is predominantly outside gets wet, it then obviously dries and it gets wet again and it dries. The moisture absorbed into the wood, it actually remains below the surface, and that makes rot start to happen. It means the wood breaks down, it becomes soft and crumbly. So you may have for example, come across a gate or a fence that has got this kind of effect, and you can literally kick it with your foot and it will just crumble. So that's wet rot. So we need to try and prevent this from happening, and obviously a finish is one way of doing that. Dry rot is actually, well, it's really bad news if you have it in your home, but it's a really fast spreading fungus. And it turns the wood into like a dry, powdery kind of state. So rather than just being caused by moisture, this is actually caused by a fungus that can take hold in the wood and break it down. And then the last one is insect attack. So things like woodworm can bury its way into softwood and hardwood. I'm not saying that you need to know about death watch beetles, but these kind of bugs do attack different types of hardwoods. Basically, these bugs, they lay their eggs in the cracks in the wood, and they eat and they create tunnels throughout the wood, which obviously creates weaknesses and can cause the wood to break down. Also, it gives this quite unattractive little black holes that appear on the surface of the wood as well. So those are the main main three reasons or four reasons why we apply a finish to avoid these things. So rot, insect attack, all of those different things. Right, we're now going to go through each of the finishes. This is not the most exciting, I'm afraid. I haven't got jazzy pictures of a polyurethane varnish can. I didn't think we needed that. So I'm just going to take you through the main bits that you need to know. So you might want to just make a few notes as we go through, pause, maybe have a look at a few different examples online or whatever. But polyurethane varnish is basically plastic. It's a plastic varnish. It's available in gloss, satin and matte. Satin, just so you know, is not as shiny as gloss. It has a slight sheen to it, but it's not as shiny. Gloss tends to be very unforgiving in terms of being able to achieve a really high quality gloss finish. Can be difficult because it kind of shows all the imperfections. You can also get completely clear and you can get coloured varnish as well. To apply it, you apply it in thin coats with a brush, and most of these finishes are applied in the direction of the grain. And by that I mean, if you look at wood in front of you or wherever, the wood grain, the lines in the wood, which are actually the veins of the tree, helps it transport water and things up and down. That's called the grain, and you'll see it running in one certain direction. So just like you sand in the direction of the grain, you actually apply the finish in the direction of the grain as well. Several thin coats would be applied. It provides a really hard, tough, heat-proof, waterproof finish. So it allows the finish of the actual grain of the wood to be seen. This is the kind of varnish you would put on floorboards. You would put it on tables that are going to get a lot of use, especially like work surfaces and things. This is the one that actually properly protects the material from dents, scrapes, scratches. So if you needed the material to have good durability, like I said, if it's waterproof and heat proof, it might be that it could be used somewhere like a kitchen table. So this one is a proper protective finish, in contrast to some of the others that are purely sort of decorative. Right, this one, water-based paints. They're obviously available in lots of different types: gloss, satin, matte, and metallic effects. How exciting. You can put them on with a brush, a roller, or a spray. Well, I don't know, it's interesting to me, but you might not find it interesting. The little knots in the wood, sometimes resin can actually come out of those little knots and spoil the finish of the material. So sometimes you have to treat those little knots with something called a knotting solution, and that stops that resin coming out. The surface should be primed and undercoated before the final coat. So basically, a primer is a layer of paint that helps the adhesion of the kind of final coat. So if you were to paint straight onto raw metal, for example, I know we're talking about woods here, but if you just got a water-based paint and painted straight onto metal, it would be quite easy to flake it off because it can't stick properly to the metal. That's why undercoats are really good. They've got good adhesion, so they really stick well. So why do we use paints? Well, paints provide both protection and colour. So they protect the wood from rot and moisture, and also obviously give colour. You can use them indoors, you can use them outdoors. Have a think about to yourself why they are normally used on softwoods. You might be thinking, well, why are they normally used on softwoods? Come back to that one in a minute. Paint makes the surfaces more aesthetically pleasing, tougher, harder, more resistant to moisture. The reason that they are normally used on softwoods is that if you painted a piece of oak, that is some kind of crime against humanity. Like, you shouldn't be painting hardwood. Hardwoods are beautiful, they're expensive. You want to be preserving the natural look of hardwoods. The reason you paint softwoods is they are relatively inexpensive, and it might be that you want to have some kind of children's furniture in a child's bedroom, and you want to paint it a certain colour. It's likely to be pine, or something like that. My daughter's bed at home is made from pine, and I would be happy to paint that. If it was made from oak, I would be horrified to paint that. So you can see why paints are mostly used on softwoods. The fun keeps going, guys. Stains. Lots of colours are available, surprisingly. This one does not give any protection to the wood. It literally just changes the aesthetics, the colour. So it's applied with a brush, a roller or a spray. You need to make sure that the surfaces are clean before you apply them. You can get stains that are, for example, like an oak stain or a teak stain or mahogany, and they will help colour but also enhance the grain. They can make an inexpensive wood look more expensive. So if you used a darker wood stain on pine, it could make it look like a more expensive hardwood. But like I said, stains have no protective properties. So don't be caught out in the exam if you're asked to suggest a finish for an outdoor piece of furniture. Don't be saying stains, and also don't be saying this one. Do not be saying wax, okay? Yes, wax is something that you've used in school quite a lot, and the reason that we use wax so much, even on products that are used outdoors, wax is just so easy to apply, and it's very forgiving. It doesn't expose imperfections in the way that you apply it because you use a cloth. Some of the products that were made this year in year 13, some of the outdoor products, would be much more likely to have a polyurethane varnish on them to protect them from actual outdoor exposure. Waxes are usually used for really kind of antique pieces of furniture, or pieces of furniture that are not going to come under too much kind of wear and tear. So you wouldn't be putting wax on like a, you might, would you put wax on a kitchen cabinet? It's basically, it provides a high gloss finish. It does increase the hardness and the toughness of the material, but what you'll notice over time is that you need to reapply it. So quite often you'll see like people adding additional layers of wax onto their wooden kind of furniture, because eventually the wax does disappear. So wax is more of an aesthetic kind of finish. It's got minimal protective properties, but it is very attractive, it looks really nice, and it enhances the natural grain of the material. Also, it's really easy to apply. Forget that it says A-level only. I don't know why it says A-level only, don't worry about that. But Danish oil, it's another one that is not the most hard wearing, but it maintains the natural appearance of the wood. You can get clear, you can get coloured tints. You apply it with a lint-free cloth, which basically means just like a non-fluffy cloth, and apply in the direction of the grain as we spoke about before. Again, this is a really, really easy one for to apply. It's literally just put it on and the wood absorbs it within about 5 minutes, and you rub off any excess. If you wanted it to be more of a waterproof coating, you need to add multiple coats to the material. Again, it's not the most hard wearing, but it does enhance the natural appearance of the timber. And this one's interesting. This is teak oil. So this oil is used for naturally oily woods like teak, surprisingly. So if you've watched some of the previous videos about the performance characteristics of woods, teak is a naturally oily wood, and it's got this really interesting property that it almost repels water. Eventually it loses that property over time. It kind of greys and kind of dries out. So teak oil can be applied to teak to enhance that weather resistance back again, but it can be put on other types of hardwoods or woods as well. So it's used for outdoor wood to improve weather resistance, and it also helps with protection from insects and fungal attack, as well as being quite aesthetically pleasing. So if you are asked to give a finish for an outdoor product, say a garden bench, they usually pick really exciting things like a garden bench. The two that I would suggest from these ones are teak oil or polyurethane varnish. Those would be the two that I would suggest. Okay, this one, pressure treatment. This is the one that might catch you out a little bit if you were asked about this. pressure treatment is a process used on timber that's going to be used outside, so for exterior wood. And it is a process used mostly on softwoods. And what it does is you take the material, the wood, and you put it into a chamber. And what happens is this chamber is absolutely flooded with a preservative called copper sulfate. So another thing to remember as well is that the chamber is created almost like into a vacuum. So the cylinder is filled with this preservative, as you can see on step 2, and the pressure that builds up inside the chamber actually forces the preservative to penetrate and go inside the wood as far as possible. So the whole issue with finishes and surface finishes is clearly that they are just on the surface. With this treatment, the material could be chipped, scratched, cut, and this finish, this pressure treatment finish, would still protect the wood because the preservative is within the wood. It's been pushed further in than just the surface. So you can see on number 3, this preservative, which is usually kind of like a green colour, and it makes the wood look slightly green. You may have seen this in B&Q when you buy exterior wood that's like in the garden centre-y bit. You might see that it has a slight green tinge to it. It's been pressure treated with this preservative, copper sulfate. So after number 3, you can see the next step is a vacuum extracts any preservatives, and then the timber is left to dry. So it's very simple. It's just kind of ensuring that the finish goes further into the wood than just the surface. And copper actually has excellent fungicidal properties, meaning that it's going to be resistant to that dry rot that we spoke earlier with the fungus that can make wood go very dry and very powdery. If you type into YouTube pressure treatment process, I've linked to YouTube video there which you could have a watch of. Obviously it's tricky for you to click on it because it's on a video, but you could screenshot that, I guess, and use that. But it's not much more than this really. You might just want to make sure that you understand this process and why it's important for the preservative to penetrate deeper into the wood than just the surface. So that is pressure treatment. Right, the last couple I'm going to talk about are dead easy. Yacht varnish is basically just another type of varnish. It's available in high gloss and satin. And it's applied to woods that are outside all year. So things like boats, boat parts, doors and window frames, and it has much better toughness, hardness and weather resistance than a usual polyurethane varnish. Yacht varnish also has a slight flexibility to it, which means that it won't crack or break if it's on something that might be moving. It's applied with a brush or sprayed directly onto the wood. So this is a really hard wearing, lasting protection for exterior wood. So yacht varnish. And the last one, the easiest of all, end on a really, really easy final finish. A colour wash. It's it's applied with a wet sponge. Wow, that's really complicated. But really, it's just watered down paint that's applied to wood to give it like a slight stain. It makes it more aesthetically pleasing. It seems to be a bit of a fashion at the moment to make things look a bit more vintagey. So you might see people use like a white kind of colour wash, but you can still see the grain and the wood underneath. So that's colour wash. Again, this is not a protective coating. This is purely for aesthetics. Right, that is all of the surface finishes, the finishes that you need to know for woods. The ones to look out for, make sure you know which ones are protective. So polyurethane varnish, yacht varnish, and what was the last one I was going to say that is protective? Oh yeah, teak oil. and the ones that are purely for aesthetics. So things like colour washes, stains, they've got very limited protective qualities and are more for aesthetics or enhancing the look of the product. There we go. See you on the next one.